So there wasn't any games of League of Legends today at Worlds, and games resume on Thursday with the quarterfinals. But what I wanted to do is share with you my insight based on my experience working in pro teams in the past as to what is likely going to be happening during these few days. So on the first day, you're going to have the scouting reports be compiled, and everything's going to be coming in for the teams to have a good idea as to what they should be preparing in draft and what they should be prepared for in terms of what their opponent is going to be playing. Now, this is what I did for Splyce when we had to play against SKT in the quarterfinals of the 2019 World Championship. So your first page is always going to be a summary page where you have two columns, right? Or at least this is the way that I did it, and this is the way that I teach the other staff that I work with to do it as well. On the left side, you have a rough summary, which just covers the main key points as to how does this team tend to play. What do they do level 1? How do they prefer to play in the early game? Is there any interesting thing about the way that they path? Where's the resource priority? What are the Rift Herald setups? What are Dragon setups? And how do they play in the mid game in general? So on the right side, this is where you have your exploits column, where you spot mistakes, where you think that this is a team that has systemic mistakes in these particular areas, and you can exploit them by setting up precursors for your players to know that if you see this, you know that the team will respond in this follow-up manner that can be exploited by taking these actions. Now, these are things that the team should already know, and it shouldn't be you trying to teach them new things through a scouting report. Because if the coaches have done the right job, they should have the responses at the back of their hand. So like in this case, what we see from SKT is that this is how the Korean teams played, right? They would play 1-3-1. It's all about farm efficiency, which meant that they would always pick up the additional neutral wave. And how Fnatic beat them in the group stage and how G2 beat them in the knockout stage as well, is that every time these Korean teams will play 1-3-1 and they will pick up the neutral wave, they will just engage them on the mid lane. So this is where you want to be watching out for this in the exploit segment, right? Some additional things, you can talk about potential wards that can be very effective against the way that the jungle paths, but that's kind of what the summary page is, and this is what you tend to explain to the players when you do this presentation to them. It's not too long. It takes about 5 minutes to go through the summary, and everything after this you see is going to be the workings as to how you come up with these conclusions, and if the players have any questions, then you refer to those accordingly. Now, for some of the players, like especially the jungler, you want to go through with them the jungle parting and stuff like that, but this is the general things that you will be going through with the entire team, because you don't want to bore them with the nitty-gritty details. So this is what the level 1s look like, and then you can show this to them, and you leave it to the players to decide what they're going to do level 1. If the coaching staff wants to come up and prescribe a level 1 as well, that's going to be possible. So in this case, if you're looking at the way the SKT plays the level 1, right, you straight away notice that there's no one covering this top side of the map. If you have a champion that can jump walls, it's possible to come in, either jump the Baron wall or jump the wall right below this river bush, and be able to loop around and attack this blue buff if you're trying to go for a level 1 play for map split. But I think given the 2020 current meta, it's all about this bottom quadrant control and how you're going to be able to contest the opponent Raptors and red buff. Right. You go through the same thing on red side. Not too much you can exploit in this scenario. And then you talk about the early game jungle parting, if there's anything interesting in general. And this was actually a bad example, because what I did here was a lot of details, right? And what I teach other staff that I work with is that you should be able to I do a presentation with them, and I do a presentation with the jungler, so that I can boil certain parting down into very clear shortenings, right? So you can call this a 6 camp clear, you can call this a 3 camp one side into gank into invade, where it allows you for much more precise language that isn't just simply he does raid into raptors into wolves, because it's very difficult to look at in terms of having a large bunch of decks and people kind of zone out. But if you're able to condense it into ideas, right, like this is a full clear why he wants to hit level 6, or if in this case, if you look at the SKT versus Clutch Gaming game, where you can just draw on the map what's the parting that he takes, then this provides a much more visual way of presenting this information to people. Okay, Rift Herald setup, and I think for the 2020 meta, Dragon setup as well is something that people are going to have to talk about. But Rift Herald, in 2019, there was one that spawned at 10 minutes. So at 9:30, what you do is that you would present a certain wave state, and then you would list out what the team does in these scenarios. Now, once again, you're not trying to teach anything new here, and the purpose of going through this is to provide some form of wargaming for the players to run through with them. Okay, this is a scenario, your top lane is being pushed in, your mid lane is being pushed in, your bot lane is pushing out, right? If they're going to swap for Rift Herald here, what options are you going to go for? And like I covered in one of my previous videos, there are 4 options that you can go for when approaching Rift Herald. You can start the Rift Herald yourself, you can match the opponents by electing to take a 5v5 team fight on top of the Rift Herald. You can stall the Rift Herald, where what you do is you push out the lanes and you ensure that the Rift Herald doesn't get a charge that takes on the turret, but all they're getting is 320 gold from it. Or you can choose to raise the Rift Herald. So when your opponent is going for the Rift Herald, you accept that and then you go for the bot lane dive or the bot lane turret instead, right? So these are the 4 options you can go for, and based on what the opponents go for over here, you create a wargaming scenario where you say that, okay, this is how they played against Fnatic, what's the option here? This is how they play against RNG, what's the option over here? If this is how they play against Clutch Gaming, what's the option over here? Then the last thing that you kind of cover is the mid-game and Baron setup. Now, what you're trying to do here is identify how does this team play. Is this a 2-lane team? Is this a 3-lane team? Or is this a 1-lane team? And how do they end up in this final scenario, right? So it's always in 2 parts. The first thing is, how do they open on the map? And what do they want to end up with? And this definitely depends on team composition, right? Because some compositions want to play 1-3-1. So the habitual part of this is that you're trying to spot how they prefer to open on the map. So this is something that was very vital for Fnatic, and I think for G2 as well. Against all these current teams, 1-3-1, they always open 1-3-1. And once you know that, the players should then know that, okay, we have top lane pushed in, we have bot lane at neutral, or bot lane is going to be pushing in. You're going to expect Khan, you're going to expect Faker to be appearing on the side lanes. And instead of trying to farming the jungle or whatsoever, you want the rest of all 5 men to be around the mid lane, so that when Teddy appears in the mid lane to defend or touch the mid lane wave, the team is ready to flash on him, get the kills, and convert them into objectives. And that kind of wraps it up as to what goes into a scouting report, right? So I know some teams, they tend to do things more in a more detailed fashion, like go through player habits and stuff like that. But this is the bare bones that what I teach players and what I teach staff as well, in terms of how do you analyze how a team plays. And this is the essentials of determining, right, these key steps. Level 1s, early game parting, Rift Herald setup, Dragon setup, mid-game openings, and Baron usage. These are the 5 key elements that you're kind of looking at in a scouting report. The teams will be able to look at this and determine potential exploits that they might want to consider drafting for in the draft phase, and allows you to kind of create a wargaming scenario, so that it creates a visualization exercise to help the players with the decision making, prepare their decision making faculties for the actual match itself. So if you enjoyed this style of content, I'll be trying to deliver more insight as to how professional teams function. I kind of lift the view to see how professional teams function, especially in the roles bubble. Obviously, I'm not there at the moment, but do like this video and consider subscribing to my channel if you enjoy this style of content. This has been Jensen. I hope you have a nice day and get hyped for roles.